it doesn't, it says I could add Jillian or, oh, here we go. Awesome. Yay! It only took us a minute, so I'm getting better at this technology stuff. But hi, Tammy. I'm so happy that you are joining me today. Honestly, it's a pleasure for me as well, because for anybody who's watching, well, A, I have known Tammy for over a year. B, we've only ever talked on the phone, maybe like, I mean, we do talk on the phone regularly now, but we don't get to chat as often as we'd like. And we've never actually met each other in person. So this is amazing.
It is very fun. So
thank you so much
for the technology. I'm glad you got the technology figured out, because you and I are both not good at the technology thing.
Exactly. No. So I am very happy that a couple of people are actually watching live too, but also for everybody who's tuning in later, I'd love to just start off with basically giving them a little bit of an idea of who Tammy actually is, of course, and then we'll dive more into like your nutritional history and what brought you to nutrition coaching, and of course a little bit of training side of things too, because actually Tammy and I, we have a very similar history in regards to many things. Thank you, Andrea, that's so lovely. But yeah, if you just want to kind of like introduce yourself, just where you live, of course what you do, and everything else.
Sure. So I live in Southern California. I'm 40 years old. Let me see. I have a full-time job. I've been an attorney, a practicing attorney, for about 15 years now. In California, we actually lived in Northern California and Southern California. Two different types of living situations. So it's in Southern California, it's more city life. And then in Northern California, it's more country life. So that's really fun. We have 2 dogs that we love and spoil to death. In fact, like later on today, we're going to take the cattle dog sheep herding. So that'll be fun. Yeah. I was never actually into the fitness space at all. Like I wasn't even active when I was young, you know, like I hated sports, Lisa. All I wanted to do was just read books. I was constantly like, you know, my nose was in a book. And I think that's my introvert, you know, tendency, because we like to just daydream in our own heads. So I was reading books growing up, and I actually didn't get into fitness and health and nutrition until like my 30s. I joined a boot camp back in 2015. And then from there, just, you know, got into CrossFit because I found that I actually enjoyed the weightlifting aspect. So CrossFit was next. And then through even CrossFit, I started macro tracking in 2018 before I started CrossFit. From there, I found I really enjoyed macro counting because it was food freedom. You know, whatever fit my macros, it was perfect. Because growing up, you know, I eat a lot of Vietnamese cultural foods, the Asian stuff. And it made me so sad that, like, you know, on certain diets, I can't eat certain things, you know, and that wasn't very sustainable because, I mean, for example, I love noodles. That's like my thing because it's a Vietnamese thing, you know. And, you know, I found that if I'm going to be on a quote unquote diet, it should really be something sustainable. Otherwise, I'm not going to stick to it because I tried keto and that lasted for, you know, the worst 24 hours of my life. I'm joking about the 24 hours, but, you know, I couldn't eat my noodles. I love fruit too, you know, like I'm like such a fruit monger and I couldn't eat fruit. So I was thinking to myself, like, something has to give because I mean, I can't just stick to restrictive foods my whole life, especially when I grew up in an environment where my mom was a fantastic cook. She had a restaurant. We love to cook things from scratch. It's part of, like,
I mean,
the
like the
joy.
recipes even that you put up now, like I love seeing all your food. Well, because it's different to like what most, I guess, nutrition coaches always post, you know, just the classical like chicken and rice and veggies or whatever. Like you have some interesting Asian influences or even just like the savory oats, or like it's out of the ordinary, but in a really cool way, in my opinion. So I personally love that. And And like, I mean, obviously I couldn't agree more with the flexibility, and I feel the same way about tracking. Not to say that everybody always needs to track for the rest of their life, but like for me personally, I often get asked like, why after such a long time, or why when being a nutrition coach and you already kind of know like portions and stuff like that, and why do you still feel the need to track? For me, it's 100% the same way. Like, it provides me freedom and actually gives me the permission to like change up my food more often, because otherwise I know that intuitively I would probably restrict more just out of fear of, oh no, I'm probably going over my calories or whatever. So for me as a control freak, I love macros also, obviously. But I'd love for you to like touch on a little bit more onto what you did before you tracked macros, because I find that incredibly helpful just to hear from, you know, you were not someone who's like just naturally super lean and whatever and like confident in your body. On the contrary, you had a lot of other issues, and so you tried a lot of other things. So maybe you can tell people a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So before I started macro tracking, when I started at the boot camp gym, they had the isogenics, you know, like the liquid diet or liquid meal replacement diet, right? And I really wish I had some sort of nutrition course growing up, because I had no idea. That was not the most sustainable for me, at least. It might be for some other people, but you know, my body got used to just eating one meal a day and then drinking meal replacement shakes, right? And that wasn't fun, because I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I love to try new foods. And to know that, okay, you get 2 shakes and then your one meal has to be 500 calories.
It's so sad.
I know. I mean, it worked, you know, because I mean, naturally, just the diet shakes and then just 500 calories per meal, you're naturally just going to eat less calories. And so I lost weight, but I didn't understand that like losing weight is not the same thing as losing body fat and sustaining your muscles, you know? So I did that, and then it wasn't sustainable, you know, like the foodie in me, I found myself like, oh my gosh, it's Friday, it's date night. Hey, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to eat the steak. I'm going to eat the fish. I'm going to eat the cake, and I'm going to drink a ton of alcohol because I can't do it when I'm on these like liquid shakes. So then I figured, okay, you know what? Let's just stop the shakes. Let's go into keto, because you know, like that's a great idea too. And then I found, like I said,
especially if you love noodles, keto is like the perfect idea.
Right? No, but I thought, you know what? That's just me and not being strong enough. You know, it was a mindset thing.
Oh, I love that you say that, because people think that like, oh, my willpower isn't strong enough, I'm not disciplined enough, and so on. Yes, but I mean, like as you say, like a one meal at 500 calories and 2 shakes, or even if it's like slightly more, I think sometimes you're like allowed a couple more snacks. That's like 1,200 calories for someone like on a daily. That might work okay for like 6-8 weeks, but certainly, as you say, like not sustainably, and not to like bitch about these like FBLive or whatever. Like they have good intentions, and like to be completely honest, I have actually tried some of the isogenics shakes. I'm not gonna lie, they taste good. They taste like a protein shake. But for me, that's like a snack. That is not my that is not a full-on meal, and especially if you view food as more of like a cultural thing, a thing that brings people together, and like you enjoy food, you enjoy cooking, like those kind of things, they take that out of food. They make it like it's a regimen, and so then that results to like you being on your diet or off your diet, as you're saying, like on the weekends, and that whole all or nothing cycle that we so desperately want to get out of or like stay away from anyway.
And then it also, I found that it fostered a lot of guilt in me, only because, you know, like we also love to travel just like you. And, you know, if I can't bring my shake and my shaker bottle the entire time. And, you know, with, you know, my boyfriend, like he's eating great meals and I'm like, oh, here I am with a shaker, you know, and it's not.
I mean, again, it's so sad. And there has to be like a form of moderation, of course. If you travel and like you eat out for 3 meals of the day and then like treat here, treat there, and try everything, of course you're going to gain a little bit of weight, and it's probably not healthy, or like you're not going to feel good either. but at the same time, if you completely, oh yes, Shakeology, if you are,
yes.
if you are like completely depriving yourself of any kind of like cultural experience, or like just even having that time with your boyfriend, you know, that takes away quality of life. And as like what you and I both want to do is like adding quality of life to people through
Absolutely.
nutrition and not the other way around. So I love that you're saying that.
Yeah, and then the guilt that I felt, like, oh no, I didn't do my 2 shakes, I did one. Or some days I'm like, oh, I didn't, you know. So it fostered the whole, you know what, I fell off the wagon, I'm so bad. And it just was, you know, detrimental to my mental health. And, you know, with a full-time job that's already demanding and stressful, like, I didn't need to add to that for myself,
Yeah.
you know. So after I tried the keto thing, I was like, okay, let's adjust it and let's just do low carb. Same thing. I just, noodles are my life. So, you know, and then, you know, and then I'm like, okay, that didn't work. So I need carbs. So let's just do low fat. Well, I'm sure, you know, since, you know, we were working together, like, that started to wreak havoc on my hormones, you know, just having like lower fats. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. And I found myself so frustrated. And there was this one day I was like almost in tears, because I'm like, there has got to be a way. Like, I think that was like my like rock bottom almost, you know. And
Yeah.
I was in the middle of transitioning to CrossFit, and then my girlfriend was like, I'm doing, you know, macro tracking, have you tried that? And I'm like, what's that? So she explained it, and then I eventually got onto an app. Oh my gosh, I forgot what it was called, but it introduced me to macro tracking. And, you know, she was like, I talked to her and I'm like, I can't believe how much carbs I'm eating. And she's like, yeah, it's okay, keep going. And I'm like, well, I can't meet it today, because I was so used to that restricted, you know, mentality of you can't eat that much carbs. And she's like, go out there and just eat some gummy bears or something. I'm like, you're kidding, right? And she goes, no, it fits your macros, don't do this often. So it was, you know, instilling the 80-20 thing. And
Yes.
that was when it just blew my mind. I'm like, food freedom, you mean I can have this once in a while? And ever since then, the trick was to find something sustainable. And so date nights were amazing, you know, traveling was amazing, and then eating more carbs and fats, like, I just felt better, you know.
Love
And
it.
then I learned along the way, like, hey, I've been in a restriction so long, like the low calorie stuff for so long. My girlfriend again, and, you know, she was just my gym buddy, she's like, I think you should do a reverse diet. What's that? Well, you need to start eating more. And I looked at her, I'm like, you're crazy, right? Like, you're nuts, I'm gonna start gaining weight. I did it anyways, because I read up on it, you know. I truly think education, you know, builds compliance. So when I started to understand, that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it very conservatively. The app helped me with it.
Yes.
And so it was just life-changing ever since then, and I loved it. So
I think it's so amazing once you like that buy-in is the hardest part, because like everything in your brain tells you that's not going to work. You know, eat more and basically maintaining the same weight, or sometimes even losing weight. It just doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
And then you
right.
either trust the person or you just trust whatever you read, and like slowly, like a week later, you're like, oh, I'm still the same weight, or like roughly the same, but I'm feeling better. 2 weeks later, I'm feeling better. Huh,
Yeah,
I love eating all this food, all this thing. And so it's
yeah,
like that buy-in, that once it makes it clicks, it's like this is like really, really, truly life changing. So I love that
yeah.
you're saying that, and I'm sure, or as you mentioned too, like as it over time restored your relationship with food to an extent as well, like where you finally acknowledged, you know, if I have these 10 gummy bears, it's probably the same as eating an apple, some
Right.
like to an extent, obviously, you know. And so you suddenly lose that fear of certain foods, of the travel, of the social aspects. And that is, yeah, I think that can truly be life changing for people. And but nonetheless, of course, it's not like suddenly from one day to another we have a great relationship with food. And I know that even now, every now and then, like some doubts come up, and sometimes like like for anybody who's watching, Tammy and I were currently actually in a lean gaining phase. So, you know, that means that we're intending to put on muscle mass and emphasis on mass, which should indicate, okay, the scale is probably going to go up a little bit. And that is super scary for someone who is like obviously used to always wanting to see the scale go down, or at least the scale must be the same, and so on. So, well, there's two things that I would love to talk about a little bit more. Firstly is like how are you dealing with that now, but or actually let's touch on that secondly, but firstly I guess what kind of experiences prior to macros and so on have you had with your body and just body shaming and like feeling like, because I know that it was not just your own personal relationship with food that you were struggling with, but also from like a cultural and family perspective, and especially in the whole Asian beauty realm. I know that, you know, you always want to be petite and tiny and like little and smaller is better and so on. So I guess if you wanna touch on that, and then I guess how you're dealing with some of these things that still come up now.
Sure. And I just wanted to give a disclaimer. These are my experiences. You know, I'm not going to speak on behalf of like the whole entire culture, although.
Of course, no, sorry.
I know. Yeah. So I just want to throw that out there. I would not like to offend anybody, but this is my experience. So I'm Vietnamese, and my Asian friends, you know, Vietnamese, Chinese, Thai, Korean, growing up, we've always had this notion of beauty where it's just like you said, the smaller the better. The skinnier you are, the better. I wore a lot of cultural outfits growing up, you know, like the Vietnamese long dress, and you have to look like just a board, you know, like just really skinny and thin, you know, like long hair. And I was this like, I wasn't that like Asian standard skinny, you know, like, I mean, I wasn't obese or like, you know, I wouldn't be considered large by anyone's standard, you know, but from our cultural standards, I was not skinny, you know, and I was told that constantly growing up. I mean, I remember when I was young, I took a trip up to Northern California to see my family. Literally got out the car after an 8-hour drive, and the first thing my aunts all said to me the second I got out the car, instead of hi, how are you, hug, kisses, whatever, right, it was are you on a diet? And I was literally 15, you know, so I'm not getting it, you know, like as an adult, like she's trying to imply something. So I'm like, no, why? Honey, you should start.
Wow.
You know, yeah, honey, you should start. And then, you know, I remember that was an awful
giving me goosebumps. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was hurtful, you know, and but you know, in their defense, in their minds, they're just like, no, we just want you to, you know, look good and you know, be, you know, just our definition of pretty. So in their minds, they didn't think it was being mean, but you know,
of course not, and that's how they have been brought up too. So like, it's not like you can blame anybody. It's just that whole,
the cultural thing. Yeah. And then I remember that week, like, then my mom also told me like 2 days later, she said, you know, I think you need to eat less because even your brother said you're starting to look a little too full. Wow. You know, so I mean, it's instilled in the men too. And so she said, yeah, your brother had mentioned it the other day, and so I told him, you know, when she actually dresses up, and when I say dress up, it's because I wore a lot of frumpy clothes back then to cover, because I did feel self-conscious from all the comments. So my mom made the comment that, you know, I saw you in like, you know, your slacks or your jeans, and yeah, you're getting a little bit full, so you need to eat less. Then the next morning I was eating lunch, and then my aunt literally went up and took my plate of food away. Wow. And took away my food. Yeah. And they're like, you can't look like this. No one's going to want to marry you. No one's going to want to, like, it was pretty brutal. So, you know, when you're 15, you're, you know, you're, I see the shocked faces on the live. When you're 15, you're just impressionable. You know, you're not sure of yourself yet. That can hurt. And then that sort of just from there on, it was they told me, you have a gut, you have this huge stomach, you know. And so my body dysmorphia, the first thing I see and I hone in every single time I, like, you know, do like a progress photo check-in, I just look straight at that. I hate that body part. And it was so debilitating for years. So how I got over it was I had to be an adult first. I had to learn how to be more confident in myself and be, you know, really sure of myself. And it wasn't easy. You know, there were hard times, but you hire a coach, and I had you that for that support. And then I had to do like questions for myself, you know, like, is that reality? You know, is your stomach really that big today? You woke up and you look the same every day. So why, or is this based on reality? So I started journaling.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that is so great, and I love so many things about this. First of all, also that you say like you had to just become an adult or like more self-confident first. But it's, of course, it's difficult if your entire environment is saying the same thing, and then at some stage you start believing that. And I think the dangerous part is too when you start associating and how you look with your self-worth, because I mean, like, it doesn't really matter, but like we tie it together, and second, like, it's tied together, but it shouldn't be. Like, how you look shouldn't matter, like how you feel, or like how worthy you feel, or even more so how your family and other people view you, right? Like, so that must be such a hard differentiation to have made. And I'm glad that you had like some great friends who introduced you to CrossFit and stuff like that, because obviously, like, I can imagine, not that is like the end all be all sport, obviously, which we'll get into also, but I can imagine that also didn't necessarily come from like that standard, you know, okay, you want to look tiny and petite, let's do CrossFit. Nobody ever said that. That's for sure. So yes.
Yeah. But, you know, one of the things that really helped with the most for the body dysmorphia was, I mentioned I journaled. So what I started to do for myself during, you know, the, when I was working with you with the body shaming, was I woke up in the morning and I asked myself, how do I feel today about my body? Like, what did it do for me, and how do I feel about it, like on an aesthetic level? And if I felt lean, what I did was I took out a notebook right away and I wrote, today I feel lean. Today I think, you know, I feel really good. I appreciate like the lines that I'm starting to see, the muscle definition. And, you know, I journaled the hell out of that. And I wrote down how I felt. I feel great. I feel, you know, because then if I got on the scale and it didn't reflect how I was feeling, I told myself, ignore the scale. And so that was when I started like having a different relationship with the scale. And so when I had really especially hard days, you know, that time of the month, you know, like you're feeling more vulnerable, I would take out literally my journal and read the pages of, hey, I feel good. And eventually you fake it till you make it, right? I started embracing it. And so that helped. You know, there's going to be hard days, and I'm still grappling with that, especially during the lean gain phase right now. But how I'm dealing with that is I'm focusing on the fact that, you know what, hey, let's not focus on the fact that, you know, the measurements are probably going to go up or the scale's going up. Let's focus on the fact that I can use this to have PRs in the gym. This is great because the PRs mean I'm likely growing muscles. So when I do the cut, I'm going to get rid of all this body fat, and it's going to be greater because the metabolism is going to be higher. And then my why is always going to help me. Like, why am I doing this? This is long term. I have to let go of the instant gratification. And the long term goal is this. And so, hey, if I get more calories, date nights are great.
Well, and I do think that one of the great things about like CrossFit or that kind of training in general is that it gets you away from simply viewing the exercise as burning off calories or like something that you have to do. On the contrary, like especially if you're a numbers person, it's so great because you can see, I'm lifting more this week than I did the week before, or I can now do a pull-up and I've never been able to do a pull-up. So like people in that kind of community, and whether it is actually CrossFit or not doesn't matter, but in that community, you know, like they encourage that side of thing. They're never going to say, like, if you walk into the gym, oh, Tammy, you're looking a little bit fluffy there around your waist. You should probably do an extra 50 burpees. Nobody would ever say that. And so I do love that. I love that you enjoyed the group aspect of it. Nonetheless, when we actually started working together, we reduced your amount of CrossFit. And maybe you want to talk about your experience with that, because I know that for you, just as it was for me, that was actually challenging.
I thought you wanted to kill me when you said you're going to eventually like do CrossFit once a day. And I'm like,
once a week, you mean, or not?
Or
Yes,
once a week, yeah.
Yes.
I was literally, when I got into CrossFit, it was so fun because, you know, you're like doing, I've never touched a barbell, and just learning how to do it, I felt even more empowered, you know, like, wow, I can do this, you know, and it builds your confidence. So I thank CrossFit for that, you know, it built my confidence. I never was able to do a pull-up. Suddenly I was doing pull-ups. I was adding more weight. You know, I'm not a heavy lifter by any means, you know, like, you're a beast, Lisa. I can't even do like half of that volume. So that's goals. But I mean, just knowing I can do like, you know, a pull up, a chin up, you know, all the gymnastics ups, double unders, you know, and stuff like that. It was really fun. So when you're on that high of, oh my gosh, I'm pushing my limits, I can do all this kind of stuff, you know, and then to be told, you're eventually going to minimize that to once a week. I was like, but what? And then part of it was, this is how I burn my calories. What are you talking about? You know, this is how I'm going to lean out. Because in 2018, before I hired a coach, I did CrossFit probably 7 to 8 times a week. It was so excessive, you know, and I would do an hour of CrossFit, and then next door was the boot camp gym. And then I would jump over there and do boot camp after. And I remember my boyfriend called me and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to boot camp now. He's like, didn't you just do a CrossFit? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, we need to talk. That's a little and he was right, you know, but I didn't realize, like, at the time, that exercise can, if you do too much, the dose makes the poison, and it's more stress on the body. And, you know, with the high stress job that I had already, it was just pouring, you know, gasoline into a fire. So what I learned through that process was, hey, you can still lift weights, but let's tone down the stress. Let's just do another form of weightlifting, you know.
Absolutely. So I think the important part that we have to learn or have to think about in this process is always like, okay, what is your primary goal? And your primary goal was not, I'm going to go to the CrossFit Games and lift, I don't know, however much. Your primary goal was aesthetics. Yes, okay, it's fun, but your primary goal is aesthetics. So what is the most helpful thing there? We always want to work with the minimal effective dose, as opposed to doing like a gazillion classes that are arbitrary and not necessarily targeting specific body parts for one, but also not necessarily giving us that right volume that we want. You know, like obviously doing this boot camp and plus the CrossFit and so on was too much cardio and not specific to where you wanted to shape or lean out or whatever. So of course we didn't reduce your amount of CrossFit from one day to the next from like 8 times to 1. Reduced it slowly. But for me, one of the biggest breakthroughs were that, well, you started sleeping better because again, like your stress levels were so high, so that on top of like reduced calories for such a long amount of time, it just all kind of snowballed. And so you started sleeping better, you started handling your stress better at work and so on, and then of course on top of that, you at some point you realize, okay, I'm actually doing less, but my body is still looking better. I'm feeling less inflamed, so it's got to be something. So again, you bought into the process as we went, but of course first you needed to trust me, which obviously I'm very thankful for. And I also know how hard that can be, because you coming from those group classes, you often think, unless I leave the class super sweaty and feeling like I have died, it wasn't an effective workout. And that is like so far from the truth.
Right. I mean, it was the true definition of work smarter, not harder. So, you know, I remember just emailing you at least 3 times, like, Lisa, I'm bored out of my mind. Like, are you sure these workouts are do you remember those emails?
Yes.
Like, Lisa, I'm not like you know, Pandy, I'm not like having a lung burner. Are you sure this is going to work? And then after like,
Yeah.
I see a laughing emoji. You know, after a month, you know, when I started sleeping, I had never been able to sleep that well in my 15 years as an attorney, because all the stress was like piling on. And so when I started switching over more to like the functional strength training, reducing CrossFit, and then within a month, I was like sleeping like a baby. I'm like, I remember emailing you one day and I'm like, forget it. I'm just going to let go of CrossFit. I'm going to embrace this. So I'm all in
Yes,
on your
I
shit.
actually like
Just do it.
literally remember that email. Yes.
Yeah.
That was awesome. No, that is so great. And like, I mean, now you still every now and then, if there's a fun thing going on in the community, you'll join in, and that's 100% fine, obviously. But I think people just always need to ask themselves, like, what is my actual goal? Do I want to be a marathon runner? Do I need to go running 500 times a week or whatever? No, you probably don't. In most people, 90% of the people just want to look good, feel good, and you know, be confident and have a good baseline fitness. And so what do we need to do for that? And yeah, I mean, I would love for you to kind of like, if you have a few main takeaways or main things that you think people could benefit from in terms of nutrition or mindset or training or whatever, some tips for you to give our listeners today.
Absolutely. The number one thing, at least for me, that I would love to impart on a lot of like even my clients, you know, our clients, is mindset. Stress. Please control your stress. You manage your stress. That's so important because it's so underrated, you know. And when I say manage your stress, I don't mean, okay, just go sit and be zen for a little bit. You know, I mean, if you're overtraining and not recovering enough, you know, that's stress. If you're not learning how to say no more often to things and keep adding to your plate, right? That's stress, you know, like saying no sometimes is good for your health and it's not going to hurt anybody. So
I think sorry to butt in there, but I think what you and I are very, very clear on is that we're actually introverted people by nature. So that doesn't mean we don't like being with people, especially obviously the people that we love, but it means that being with other people drains us more. So if you're already drained by the end of the week, asking yourself like, okay, what gives me energy? Because an extrovert draws energy from other people. So, you know, go out and do your thing. That's cool. But like for people like us, sometimes it might be, okay, I need to cancel this because otherwise I know I won't show up as the best version of myself. And I'm just going to suffer from that and not recover as well over the weekend or so on. So I think that is like definitely saying no more often is so valuable for sure.
Yeah, because if you're just going to add more to your plate and then you're going to get into this cycle of, well, I didn't get that done, then it's going to, you know, foster that guilt again. And I know that guilt is just not going to be productive. So learn how to say no, control the stress. That's one. And that goes to mindset, because the nutrition and the fitness game, it's really mindset, you know. Number two is please find something sustainable, you know, like take it from us, you know, I know you've tried a lot of diets as well too. Find something that fits for your lifestyle, you know, and I'm not just talking about the food. Like, I hate running. Like, the only time I will run is if there's a zombie apocalypse and I need to save my dogs. You know what I mean? Like, you can eat my brains, you know, but I'm going to save my dogs. And that's the only time I'm going to run. So, so please find something sustainable, whether it's, you know, nutrition or exercise. I love weightlifting, so I'm going to do the weightlifting. If you love dancing and Zumba, like, and that's how you do it, please just pepper in like one or two, like, you know, weightlifting sessions, but please continue, because that's the only way you're going to stick to getting your body moving. And then three, I would say work smarter, not harder. You know, I mean, my quality of life just exponentially increased when I ate more and did less. So
well, just to the point of your 8 CrossFit sessions and the boot camp, you know, that's so many hours. I mean, not to like, obviously, because I've made so many mistakes myself as well. But I mean, just the time that you're saving with that now. At the moment, you're doing 4 days per week, right? That's also, and those take like an hour each session. And you have more muscle mass than ever, and you know, like same or weight or whatever, it doesn't matter, but lot less body fat percentage for sure. And so in general, that gives you an extra at least 5 hours in your week overall.
Yes.
It's cutting down from 8 to 4 sessions. So
Yeah.
I'm sure your boyfriend is thanking you for that. Your dogs are thanking you for that. Your stress management is thanking you for that and all of that. So like it's extra time that you have to actually live your life once again. So no, I think that that is such a good tip with regards to sustainability. And just to pick up on the stress thing before as well, I think an important part or some important reminder would be to like that emotional stress plays into that as well. I think in like these times, I mean the last 2 years anyway, but like even now with the upsetting news like yesterday and so on, worldwide implications whatsoever, I'm sure like everybody has some sort of emotional response to that. But I think what we can always just remind ourselves of is like, okay, how much is really in our control and how much is really worth stressing out about? Because like, is it really going to change anything if I watch those news for the 5th time? Probably not. Is it really going to change anything if I bitch about that for the 10th time to that person? I mean, communication or like talking about your feelings helps, yes. But do we need to go over and over and over? No, it's much like what you focus on, this is what you're going to feel like, you know. So put your focus on something positive. That doesn't mean you need to watch Disney Channel all day long, but like, you know, do something that brings you joy and that puts the aspect onto gratitude and the things that you have and all of that. I think that that is like so underrated when it comes to managing cortisol and assisting in weight loss and just overall well-being.
Yeah, and again, underrated, but it really does work, and it really helps with your health and fitness in the long run. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good little round off in general, but I want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences, especially in regards to like the body shaming and body dysmorphia, because I know that that is hard to work through things like that. And I think though that everybody who has listened to that can only like appreciate your vulnerability, as we all have our things to go through. But I guess the main takeaway is just basically that if something doesn't work for you at the moment, it's not because you're too weak, because or because you're not good enough or whatever. You're probably doing the wrong thing or you don't have the right support. So, you know, keep looking until you find the right thing for you that's sustainable as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Tammi. And if you just want to share your Instagram handle as well, so everyone can go and follow you and the amazing recipes that you put out.
Yes, please. My handle on Instagram is Coach Tammi, that's one word, _NCL, which stands for our Nutrition Coaching and Life. So I would love for you all to follow me on there. Yeah, I post recipes, so hopefully you guys can find some, you know, value in that. And if you actually cook any of my recipes, please tag me. I love it. It's just a, you know, it's a love language. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a lovely weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.